Today, we're gonna put Bullwhips and Stockwhips head to head in an epic
Bullwhip versus Stockwhip showdown.
Let's get started. There are a lot of different styles of whip in the world. There are hybrid whips, cow whips, signal whips, snake whips, but there are two types of whips that are by far the most popular, and that is bullwhips and stockwhips. There are some big differences in the way that these two styles of whip are constructed that makes them handle a lot differently. The biggest differences are the handle and how the transitions are constructed. In a bullwhip, the handle is typically a steel rod or a wooden dowel of some sort, and the plaiting starts at the heel of the handle and runs into the transition. So on a bullwhip, the plaiting runs the length of the whip, whereas in a stockwhip, the handle is typically a hardwood dowel of some sort or a bamboo cane, and the thong is attached to the handle with what's called a keeper. So at any given time on a stockwhip, you could actually detach the thong from the handle. Because of these differences in the construction of these whips, they both have a very unique look, a unique aesthetic. But I don't care about what they look like today. Today, I want to know how they crack. I'm going to compete these whips in 5 different contests that I've put together. And hopefully, at the end of it, if you are in the market for a whip, this will help you choose whether a bullwhip or a stockwhip is best for you. The 5 categories that I've chosen to compare these whips in is ease of use, speed, accuracy, volume or loudness, and then two-handed whip cracking routines. So let's get outside and crack some whips. For these contests, I'm gonna be comparing this 6-foot bullwhip with a 10-inch handle and these 4.5-foot thonged 18-inch handled stock whips. So I'm gonna do a quick warm-up and then we're gonna dig in. Oh, and one quick thing. When it comes to whip cracking, I am a hobbyist at best. I'm definitely better at whip making. So I'm gonna be doing pretty basic whip routines for the tests today. All right, we're gonna start the first test, which is ease of use. So I'm gonna take the bullwhip and the stockwhip, and I'm gonna try and crack it with as little effort as possible and see at what point they crack. So that's cracking. Yep. That one didn't. And that one definitely did. All right, I'm gonna do the overhead crack now. Yeah, so this was pretty easy to crack. When you're cracking whips in general, you don't need to muscle it. That, especially as you're learning, that's kind of how you can injure yourself. So I'm gonna grab the stock whip. Woo! Yep. Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. All right, so the stock whip is really easy to crack. I'm gonna call this one right now. The ease of use test goes to the stock whip. For our next test, we're gonna do the speed test. So I'm just gonna do volleys with these and see which one I can get moving the fastest. Here's the bullwhip. Oh, okay, nope. Oh. All right, that's about as fast as that's gonna go. And the stock whip. Whoa, oh, that handles a lot differently than the bullwhip. Remember when I said that I'm not the best whip cracker? Here we go. Ah. Woo, And that's about as fast as I'm gonna get that one going. So I'm actually a little surprised by this, but so far as speed goes, I think the Bullwhip wins. But so far as consistency goes, this one won. But this was a speed test, so I guess the Bullwhip wins the speed test when it comes to the volley. Woo! I was kind of surprised by that previous test. I thought for sure the Stockwhips were gonna win. For this next test, we're gonna do accuracy. So there's a really fun game that you can play with target practice. You take a strand of spaghetti and then you try and cut as many pieces off of the strand of spaghetti before you break the whole thing off. We're gonna do 1 point for every cut, and we're gonna do -0.5 point for every miss. I'm gonna do this test 5 times with each whip so that we get kind of a quantifiable measurement here. I'm a total nerd, so I like quantifiable data. Let's get started. We're gonna start with the Stockwhip. Okay. And we don't start until I get the first cut. 1, 2, 1.5. 1. Oh, 1. 1. 1/2. 1.5. 2.5. 2. Bullwhip test 1. All right. Ooh, that's not promising. 1. We're gonna call that one 1. 1, 2, 3. Hey, that was a good one. All right, so we're all done with that test, and the grand winner was... I'm gonna save this one for when we get back to WhipWorks Central. Let's move on to the next test. That was a ton of fun. I don't do nearly enough accuracy practice. So the next test is two-handed whip cracking. Now, I have a bit of a confession to make here. I do have a second Bullwhip, but it's a 5-footer with an 8-inch handle, and this one is a 6-footer with a 10-inch handle. So doing two-handed whip cracking is gonna be super off-balanced and just not good. But in general, I'm gonna say that for two-handed whip cracking routines, Stockwhips are gonna be the way to go. So for today, I'm gonna say that the Stockwhips win, but there's always an exception to the rule. So now for the 5th and final test, which I think is one that a lot of you are going to be very interested in, which is the volume test or the loudness test. I'm just gonna take each of these whips and crack them as loudly as I can. I wish there was a good way to measure this, but decibel meters that can measure the differences in the volume that are created with a sonic boom cost well over $5,000. So you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. 2. Yep, that's pretty loud. Okay, here we go. It's pretty good. Woo! That was pretty loud. My ear is ringing here. So the Bullwhip, I think, was definitely the winner of that competition. You can't see it, but there's a little pagoda over here, so I could hear the echo coming back at me, and there was definitely a lot more noise coming from this one. It makes sense that the Bullwhip was louder. It's a shot-loaded whip. It's a heavier whip. You're just gonna get more noise from it. And now, if this was an 8-footer or a 10-footer, it would have definitely been louder. So I think weight and length are the two biggest factors when you're looking at how loud a whip's gonna be. That was a ton of fun. Now, I am ready to head back to WhipWorks Central and tally up the final score. Here we we are back at WhipWorks Central. Whips have been cracked, scores have been tallied, and now we want to know which whip is the victor. For the first test, we had the ease of use test, and the winner in this one pretty handily went to the Stockwhip. Now, this was a bit of a surprise for me. I thought maybe the Bullwhip would win because it's shot loaded, and I thought maybe that would add to the taper and make it require less energy to crack. But it seems that when it comes to finesse work, the Stockwhip is the winner. After that, we had the speed test. Now, this was the real upset of the day. I thought that the lighter weight and the longer handle on the Stockwhip would give it an edge, but it seems that the shorter handle allowed me to crack it faster. Now, I had to expend a lot of energy to get this thing moving as quickly as I did, but because of the shorter handle, I was able to. If I was better at cracking whips, maybe I would have been able to get the Stockwhip to move faster. I'm not positive, but based on my current skill level, the Bullwhip was the definite victor of the speed test. Now for the third contest, which I think a lot of you are going to be very interested to see the results of, the accuracy test. The final scores for the accuracy contest were the Stockwhip with 8 points and the Bullwhip with 10 points, and the crowd goes wild! I did not think that the Bullwhip would win this one. I thought that the Stockwhip with the longer handle would give me more control and more accuracy. But I think what gives the Bullwhip the edge for target work is the fact that it's platted all the way through. I think that because of this, you get a lot more accuracy as you go down the taper of the whip. Whereas the keeper on a Stockwhip is a little less predictable, and I think you lose a little bit of accuracy with Stockwhips. The fourth contest was, if you remember, not much of a contest at all. It was the two-handed category, and I gave that one to the Stockwhips. In general, Stockwhips are going to be your choice for two-handed whip cracking routines. I say in general, there is always an exception to the rule when it comes to whip cracking. I've seen bullwhips that are specifically built for two-handed whip cracking routines with longer handles, lighter build, with no shot-loaded cores. These factors make it pretty ideal for two-handed work. I've also seen extremely heavy and very long Stockwhips, like 10-foot Stockwhips, which you'd never want to do two-handed whip cracking routines with. But again, in general, Stockwhips for two-handed whip cracking routines. The final competition was the volume contest, and this one very handily went to the Bullwhip. I thought that this was going to happen. This is a heavier whip. It's a little bit longer. I thought maybe the longer handle on the Stockwhip would give it a bit of an edge in the volume test, but what it all came down to was the loaded core and the heavier weight. But again, there are always exceptions to the rule. You can find shot-loaded Stockwhips, and you can find really lightweight bullwhips. So just look for what you want and know what you're looking for. And the winner of the Stockwhip versus Bullwhip showdown is everybody! Everyone's a winner! Okay, that may be a little anticlimactic, but I think it's really unfair to say categorically one of these whips is better than the other. I think it's important to know their general strengths and weaknesses. So, in general, bullwhips are gonna be heavier and you're gonna be able to crack them louder, and they may be a little better for accuracy and target work. Whereas Stockwhips are great for finesse work and they're awesome for two-handed whip cracking routines. But again, you can always find heavier, longer Stockwhips and shorter, lighter bullwhips. It just depends on your preference. So there you have it, a comparison of the typical bullwhip and Stockwhip. If you're interested in ordering a custom bullwhip or Stockwhip, or seeing some Stockwhips that I currently have available, please check out my Etsy shop. I have a link to that down in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please crack on that like and subscribe button. If you have any opinions about bullwhips versus Stockwhips, please leave those in the comments down below. I'd love to learn more about which you prefer. And as always, happy cracking.